Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Devyani Prasad, and I'm part of the Teaching at the Right Level Africa and Pratham Education Foundation teams. Very excited to have so many of you here with us today, and we look forward to this being an engaging session. Um, as I mentioned, for those of you who were able to join on time or even before time, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 3466433 to tell us why you have joined us today. What are you hoping to learn? What are you excited about? What are you hoping to share? It'll be great to see what people are thinking. And as you can see on the screen, we already have people's thoughts popping up. So very exciting to be with you all today. Um, as I mentioned, my name is Devyani, and I'm going to help kick us off today. So, as all of you know, since you signed up for this event, we are all here to talk about focusing on foundations as we think about children's education coming out of the pandemic and thinking about school systems moving forward. Calls for two key actions, which is really looking at assessment for action and finding innovative, impactful strategies to focus on foundations for children, especially in primary grades, was put together by a coalition of different actors. We are all partners working with many of you in different parts of the globe and in Africa and Asia, maybe even in Latin America. The partners are Douglas Marshall Junior Foundation, IPA, JPAL, Pratham, Teaching at the Right Level Africa, and Young Love. So we're very, very happy to have all of you join us today and hope that you will find this session interesting. Just as a reminder, go to www.menti.com and use the code 3466433 to tell us why you are joining us today. Kim, if you don't mind, could you scroll down a little bit so that we're able to see what people's responses are? So, a lot of people are here to learn about teaching at the right level and its application, which is great. Hopefully, we're able to share a little bit about that in our opening presentation and then discuss more in the breakout groups that we will have. Many people are here to think about education, assessment, innovations in the new context coming out of the pandemic and learning about the implementation of teaching at the right level and working with school systems. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'll quickly walk us through the brief agenda as you all are going through the responses. So we have an agenda for about 90 minutes today. We will start with a presentation by Dr. Rukmini Banerjee, who is the CEO of Pratham Education Foundation in India, to set the context for our discussions. We will take any questions for Rukmini and others who are part of the partner organizations who have put this together after that. And then we will go into breakout groups, which you all have signed up for, to have more of an in-depth sort of guided discussion on some of the challenges that we see coming up as we take forward this agenda. If you are not automatically allocated to a breakout group, please do select a breakout group. You would have received instructions on how to do that. And of course, if you have any issues during the event, you can please reach out to Kim Tichman, who you will see in the participant list, and she will be able to help you out. The group discussions are short, just for 20 minutes to give us a flavor of how we are all thinking. And then we hope to be able to come back and share back with the whole group on our discussions. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Rukmini Banerjee, CEO of Pratham Education Foundation, to give us an overview of some of the ideas that we are here to discuss today. Rukmini, would you like me to share the screen?
Yes. Hello to everyone. I don't know what time it is for different people, morning, afternoon, night. Good to be here. I know we have very tight time. So Devyani, how long do I have?
You have about just under 20 minutes.
Okay, okay. So we have to do a speed session right here. Um, so entire discussion today is really on how do we build better foundations. And today's day and time, I think this is even more necessary than ever before. But we should remember that at least in countries, at least like ours, the period leading up to COVID also had some problems. And we don't know exactly once things go back to some kind of normal, whether we will be worse off than where we were. Devyani, if you move to the next slide. Um, I know that there is a lot of people doing research on this topic, and there is this study that now is being quoted a lot from Pakistan. And the authors of the study, Jishnu Das and Tahir Andrawi, are very amused because if this study had come out at any other time, it would have been a study that published in a paper. But because this is one of the few long run studies studying the impact of disaster on what happened to children, I think it has also been released at a time that it's very useful to us. And I'm citing it because I think the study points to some things which are really quite important. I would encourage everybody to go read it. But from my reading of it, I took away two things. And one of the things was that, as the slide says, that the families returned to their pre-disaster economic conditions after a few years. In many ways, they were back to where they were, but the children's learning levels did not. And the authors of the study go back to look at, what could be the causes or what could they attribute this decline to. The natural tendency of everyone is to say if schools are closed, then there will be learning loss. But I think what the study finds is that a large part of not coming back to where they were could be attributed to what was done once schools opened. And therefore, I think that what I want to talk about today is it's really important for us to think about what we should do once kids start coming back to school so that we are able to actually deal with whatever kinds of deficits we have in the best possible way. Go ahead. And again, I mean, these are all things that we know. Everyone's talking about them. We know from India that there was a lot of backlog there was a lot of difference between what the children are expected to do at a different grade and where people were. Big variations even in the same grade, and many reasons why that may be the case. I don't want to go into that right now. Familiar to most of you. But the fact is that the crisis happened at a time when the distributions of children's learning were already quite diverse. Next, Devyani. Here is an example from India. The data is from 2018. This comes from our annual status of education report. Many of you may be familiar with it. There are versions of this kind of assessment that are done in large parts of Africa as well. Just to kind of just take you through this, in the top right-hand corner, you can see the tool that we use. And the tool is in Hindi, but that doesn't matter because if you are like some parents in India, they can't read it either, but you can tell that some parts of it are easy. There are letters, there are common words, there's a simple paragraph, and then there is a slightly longer story. Most textbooks in India in first grade have the paragraph type of text. And by second grade, you're expected to read this kind of story. And what we are looking at is grades 3, 4, and 5 here. And I think immediately you can see that in fifth grade, there is about half the children who are reading at least at second grade level. In third grade, if you look at the percentage, the rightmost column, you can see that across India, we have a number which is 27%, which basically indicates that out of every 10 children who are in third grade, about 3 are at grade level in third grade, which means that as you go further and further along, more and more children go behind. And by fifth grade, you see this situation where you know that about half the children are at least at second grade level, but you have a whole set of kids who are not. And so if you're a fifth grade teacher, what would you do? If you are a typical teacher in a typical school and you're expected to complete the curriculum for the year, then you would focus on the 50% that can go further. But that means you're leaving behind a whole bunch of kids. And so our suggestion, go back, our suggestion in this situation is to say that a lot of catch up is needed. If children need to progress and get to grade level, or at least get higher, they can't do it unless they've learned to read or do math. And so how do you do it? How did we do it before, and what would we suggest now? Because if these children come back at the once schools open, it's possible that there has been a shift towards of the distribution towards the left, where we may see more kids who are not reading very well. Reading, I think, or basic arithmetic, in my mind, is a bit like swimming or like riding a bike, that there is a certain threshold. If you go over that, the chances that there will be these skills are durable is strong. But if you're on the cusp, or if you were just before it, the chances that you've slid back is high. And even looking at those numbers here, we can almost begin to estimate what could have happened. So in India, or at least in Pratham in India, we have been trying to figure out what would be the case. One is that, what is a normal year-on-year learning improvement that we see when things are fine? And as we prepare for what to do when schools open, what can we do? So if we go to the next slide, Devyani, we see, and I'm taking a long story and making it short. We see, if we look at our annual data from this kind of data that you just saw, ASER data, year on year for the last 10 years. And if I take a particular state, I've taken a state in India, Uttar Pradesh, which is one of our largest states and has a significant amount of, I would say educationally, it's one of the more backward states. We see that depending on which year we look at and which grade, you may have anywhere between 5 to 15 percentage points improvement in the children's ability to read at second grade level in a normal year. Now, against that, we wanted to ask what is possible if there is a very focused attempt made to really improve these learning levels by doing, Devyani, if you go, no, actually, wait, we'll go back to that later. We worked with the state government of Uttar Pradesh about 2 years ago on a statewide program. It's a huge state. It has about 120,000 schools. And what we saw was that in a period of about 2 months and a bit more, say 2.5 months, you could see almost a 15 percentage point improvement in when the entire system was geared to doing this. Now, what I'm taking away from this, we'll get back into how this happened and so on later. But what I'm seeing from this is that if in 60 or 70 days, a large system, which is not particularly dynamic in any definition of the word, is able to bring about this kind of change, then if a big focused push is put on to really building basic reading and math, especially for kids who are third grade and above, I think, and if we devote sufficient time, why only 60, 70 days? We've been talking about a period of, let's say, at least 100 days to begin with. If Indian schools open roughly around January even, we will have at least 100 days in the school year. Our school years start in April. To say that if we focus basically on building back the basics, we may get back to being in a position which is actually better than where it was when we left off. Now, I can't see most of your faces. Probably there are eyebrows which are up. There are people who are saying this is, God knows what this woman is talking about. And so let me just explain a little bit more how this is possible. So Devyani, if you go back to the slide, go backwards. You go backwards. So What is teaching at the right level? Fundamentally, teaching at the right level, I mean, there are all kinds of teaching at the right level. The other day I heard in some conference and they said, whoever said it's teaching at the right level with a small t and a small r and a small l. So whether it's capital or small, it doesn't matter. One of the key fundamental ideas behind teaching at the right level is I figure out where my children are at. If I'm a teacher, imagine that this is not India, but this is a class. I spend 5 minutes with every child, uh, asking her to read, asking her to do a very similar thing in math. And I think what I get is a good knowledge about where every child is. The child gets special time with me, which may be necessary once schools open because we need time to reconnect. And that way I have a sense not just of individual children, but also of the distribution in my class. And let's say that the distribution looks like what we have here. Then if you follow the teaching at the right level approach, and if you follow it like the way we do, we would say, let's move away from the typical way in which schools are organized, which is by rows. Most school systems have age grade organization of the school. You're 10 years old, you're in fifth grade, and you do a fifth grade curriculum and fifth grade textbooks. We are suggesting that take the same set of resources, but let us reorganize for a couple of hours a day by columns, which means that in grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, I have children who can't recognize letters yet, or can recognize letters but can't read words. Let me treat them as a group. Let me take children who can read words but not sentences as a group. And maybe I take those who can read some as a third group. And I work with them because I'm starting at the level at which they are and we are moving ahead. And so this is what we did essentially across the state to get to the results that you saw. Moving ahead, Devyani, if you skip ahead to this slide, key elements, and I'm sure in your breakout groups we'll discuss this assessment for action. Today that tool is called the Assert tool, but it really started off as a way for an instructor or a teacher to figure out where their kids were at and be able to group them and start with activities that at their level. And I think it's going to be even more important, as I said, to do that right now, because we need to remind ourselves, teachers need to remind themselves about where the kids are, and the kids need to be able to reconnect with teachers. Then I can group kids on the basis of where they are today. And we find in India, it's not difficult to group grades 3 to 5 together because their age group is also quite mixed. We have a very simple goal, and the goal that we see on the tool has actually played a big role in helping us explain to parents particularly that the goal of this entire building back, catch up as it's called in Zambia, teaching at the right level as it's called in English. In Hindi, in Pratham in India, we call it Kamal, which means magic or amazement, because in a short period of time, your kids are going to be able to jump up and reach some kind of a reading level. A couple of hours a day are allocated within the school day for doing this, because there's no point in having teaching at grade level when nobody is at grade level in your class. And as we said, teachers are allocated to different groups. And then comes a very key point, which I feel is sometimes forgotten in all of this, that before we get to teachers and orienting teachers, at least in the pre-COVID time, we had a whole month or more of the level above the teacher. They are called different things in India and different states, but essentially these are the people who can lead the teachers, not just train them and leave them, but these are the people who can lead the teachers to tell them what to do. We call them cluster coordinators in many Indian states, who themselves for 3 weeks practice this method, make sure that their own progress from their own hands is happening before they go to start orienting or talking to the teachers. And then we, track progress. Depending on what program you're running, we may track the progress. We actually think in Pratham that kids make one level jump every 10 days. So as soon as you have started calling somebody a word level child, they've already moved. So these groups are highly dynamic. And if you think progress is going to be fast, then tracking them quickly is a good idea. How to do all this in this current time, I'm sure we will discuss, but we think it's possible because we've been doing this with actually village volunteers and getting quite promising results. Next slide. And Devyani, how are we doing on time? Am I talking too fast? but I have no choice.
We're okay.
Okay, so there is this slide has a lot of small print. You can look at it later, but basically, I would say there is a business as usual, which is how our schools normally operate. But if we are going to go to teaching at the right level, there are fundamental shifts both in the goal, in the way we do the assessment, in the way the training is done, the grouping is done, in the activities we do, and how we measure. And I think it transforms classroom practice, as we say here, because it ensures the possibility that almost all children will be able to make progress. And frankly, I think that at this time, when there is so much gloom and doom all around, once schools open and we get back and we reconnect with kids, it's going to be really important to have a real burst of positive energy. When kids make progress, firstly, it makes the kids feel really good about themselves. It brings back their own faith in their own capability. And it's not just that they're learning to read. I think as your own confidence in your capability increases, you're actually able to, be more motivated, engage better, and do a whole lot of things. When kids begin to progress, it makes teachers really happy. I think this is something that I've seen across the board, that progress of kids is the best fuel for the whole system, because it makes the teachers feel that they are doing something of value. And similarly, I think at home, parents get excited because after a long period of not much change, when you see kids improving, kids showing off the fact they can read or they can do math, it brings a real positive energy to everyone. And we are all going to need that positive energy as we move ahead. Not sure, but Devyani, I have anything more on to say. We've seen the tool. For those who like numbers, these are some numbers of, we tried to put together when such programs have happened. I love the name that they use in Zambia for this. It's called Catch Up, and it really is Catch Up. And here are the Zambia results. I think everywhere we see a significant improvement, and every round that you do, I think you improve some more. And all of these numbers that you're seeing, whether it's from Zambia or India, are substantial numbers. So I just want to end. I'm pretty sure that this is that I think that this phase-wise school reopening may happen. It's a very good time at that point to connect with parents so that parents can help at home as well. Good time for doing basic readiness activities with the younger kids, but a excellent time for catch up. And I do feel that if you believe the numbers that I am showing you, that a focused, concentrated, aligned, it has to be aligned from top to bottom within your system, effort to build back foundations will pay results if we put high priority on it. And so before COVID, we were able to see some very quick visible results, and we don't see any reason now. In fact, some of the work that we are doing with volunteers in the village, we feel that this period of everybody kind of being in sort of twilight zone has in fact increased the motivation all around to get back to some kind of structured activity and to see progress. So this may be a very good opportunity as soon as it's possible to try something like this. So let me stop so that you can ask questions.
Thank you, Rukmini. We are happy to take some questions now, either questions for Rukmini or questions in general on teaching at the right level and other approaches and any of our experiences of any of the partner organizations who are here with us today. So if you have questions, you can either raise your hand or you can put them down in the chat as you like. Do we have any questions? Yeah, Simon, do you have a question? You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself, Simon, to ask your question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for this period. I'm excited to listen to this transformative approach. And my question will be: in Kenya, I'm getting this from Kenya, and in Kenya we have first reopening of schools. They are grade 4 and standard 8 and Form 4. So my concern is with regards to this program. As we speak right now, the children that are the focus group, that is grade 3, 4 to 5, are not yet at school, are not reopened. And the learning loss persists to a period we don't know when actually we will open. It's still very uncertain. I was wondering, is there a way that this teaching at the right level program can be done at the community level, apart from doing it at school level? Because I understand the school environment is one that is actually talked about in most cases. But I'm wondering, is there a way that this approach can still be implemented at the community level? A case in point, just 1 minute. I am desirous of conducting this approach. I just formed an NGO for the process, and one of the flagship programs is teaching at the right level. I call it myself as keeping pace. Now, I thought of organizing a group of children, talking to their parents, mobilizing community so that they can come at a place and we then implement this program. Is there a way that we can leverage on such issues or such programs so that we can then shift the focus from schools when the children are not in school, so that we can do it at the community level and not wait until the children open? Thank you.
Certainly, there are others who are on this call who can also help me answer. Um, Simon, we have used this kind of approach a lot in communities, and we think that actually the best scenario is when the school and the home work in tandem with each other, right? Because we all know that, I don't know about other people here, but I think at least for the Indians, you would not be where you are if it wasn't for what you learned in school and for someone at home who was really, helping you get ahead. For children who don't have educated people at home, I think in the community help is really important. And so we, in fact, feel that this, even right now, we've been working with volunteers who are working with a small group of kids just in their neighborhood. But the idea is the same, that you start at the level of the children and then you move higher. And the goal that you're achieving is just fluent reading of simple stories and simple texts. So we can do it, and there are many others here who can uh, you know connect with you and help you and tell you what to do.
Thanks, Rukmini. Thanks, Simon. We have a lot of questions, so just in the interest of time, if people could type their questions instead of saying them out, I'll try to bunch some together. So, Rukmini, there's several questions about alignment or integration of TAL with the existing curriculum and with existing school practices. So what is the strategy there? What has been our experience? Can it be integrated into curriculum? Does it use existing government teaching learning materials, new materials? And how can we use this approach for all subjects instead of just basic reading and math?
I can't answer all questions. I will just answer the ones that we have some experience of having solutions to. So I would say that there is a school structure. So how does this fit into a school structure? Part of, I think, the problem of where we have reached is because of this overambitious curriculum. So I think that at least in the case of India, changing curriculum is a very long drawn out process. But as soon as governments realize that there is this learning issue. I mean, a big part of this is that very often you feel that this must be a problem for 10% of the kids or with 15% of the kids. But the fact that you are seeing the kinds of numbers that you saw is sometimes very difficult for policymakers because these are children who've been in school for 5 years. And so I think that this, I don't know who put it down as assessment for action. I think it's really important that you use something simple like what we do to really check it out for yourself to make sure there is a problem. Because if there's no problem, then you can go ahead and do other things. But if there is this kind of problem, it's going to hold back the whole system. So we see that in states where there is a realization that there is a problem and a desire to do it, the first round or the second round, because of the way planning processes and fund flows in India work, it sometimes happens towards the middle or the end of the school year. But invariably, people feel that this should be done either as a part of kind of summer holidays or at the beginning of the school year. Uh, there are complications of why this has not quite come into the early part of the year, but there have been state governments who will use these kind of catch-up measures, certainly in the summer holidays, when you're not bound by curriculum and so on. I think that it is something that people have to experience, that there can be a big jump. As soon as you experience it, you start thinking about where to fit it into your system. We are hampered in India by an annual planning calendar, but there may be other countries where they do multi-year planning, where this could be fitted in at a different time of the year. Can we do this for other subjects? I don't know. We haven't quite done it because we feel once you've learned to read, you are actually able to do a lot of other things. And so really the challenge is, by the time you are older, you are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you are also developmentally able to handle acceleration. And so you can actually, we've seen that we have these kind of problems even in 6th and 7th grade, but kids can make fast progress, faster than the younger ones, if they are given this right opportunity. But as you get older, in India at least, the pressure of the curriculum gets harder and harder. I mean, it gets heavier and heavier. And so it has been easier to create these kinds of programs within the primary school as opposed to space for them in higher grades. I mean, there's been a lot of experimentation that has been done, and some of it has been studied as well. There's a lot of language questions coming, so I just want to say that at least in India, much of the instruction happens in the regional language of that area. So parents who are not educated, but they still, if you read it out, they can understand what it is. We have tried it in different ways in a second language. Takes a little bit longer, but our large-scale experiences of doing it in a language that is prevalent both in the school as well as in that region. I think I'm going to say something.
Amrita, what do you?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, we've funded various kinds of, so this is Amrita Huja at the Douglas V. Marshall Jr. Family Foundation. We've been funding various kinds of catch-up or catch-up-like programs for at least 10 years now. And I just wanted to address the question of whether this can be done beyond 3rd to 5th grade. And I think the answer is very much yes. I think it has been done less. But the basic principle is really that kids are at really different levels within the same classroom. Very often, most of the kids are below grade level. This is true in almost every subject. So there's no reason you can't design a curriculum, or an approach that would address this catch-up problem at various levels. And we have, like, Pratham itself has a program targeted at girls in 10th grade, which has some of the same principles. They've dropped out of school and you're trying to catch them up on what they've lost so they can take a 10th grade exam. We had another grantee who did this for 1st to 8th grade, on a competency-based level, and they included subjects like science and social studies as part of that. There's organizations in Africa who are trying to catch up 6 years of school in 1 year. There's an organization in Pakistan who is trying to do this for the whole primary curriculum, very much tied to as long as you maintain the basic principles that kids learn individually, and most of them are not at grade level, and then you can design a curriculum to address this at almost any grade for almost any subject.
Thank you, Amrita. Cynthia, would you like to add something?
Yeah. In addition to that, Ghana tried teaching at the right level in the upper primary, that's grades 4, 5, and 6. And we did it through the school system. So during the TAL period, the children are grouped according to learning levels. So non-readers will come together, or those who are beginners will come together in one group. Those who are reading paragraphs will come together, and then the avid readers will come together in one group. And they had 1 hour for English and 1 hour for mathematics. Then after that, they go back to their grade level classrooms and continue with their grade level curriculum. And we had monitoring tools also to monitor, and the teachers were trained, the circuit supervisors who provide professional support for the teachers and head teachers were also provided training to provide support. So it becomes a catch-up program when you run it in addition to the existing curriculum. But thankfully, last year we were going into a curriculum review for the country. And so we are trying to integrate the methodology into the mainstream curriculum so that all teachers are provided with basic training in to be able to assess their children and to be able to group them so that they can be presented lessons at the level at which they are operating so that they catch up and can better benefit from the mainstream curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think there are lots of questions. I don't know if we have the time to take all of them. But I just wanted to say, there's questions on language. I would encourage you to try to have this discussion in group 3 if you find the opportunity to do that. There are also lots of questions around how to get systems or teachers incentivized to do this, or how do you integrate into systems? Again, I think the different breakout groups will have people from organizations who have had experience of working with government systems. So I would encourage you to try and talk about some of the experiences there. And I think just one point from my side to add, what we have seen with teaching at the right level kind of approaches is because, and Rukmini mentioned this also, because the improvement is seen quickly, that acts as one of the biggest motivations, especially for the teachers in the system. And the way we think about capacity building and working with the system to develop capacity builds that motivation along the way, because you're actually doing this yourself, you're experiencing the success, experiencing the challenges as you take this forward in the system. And we'll try to talk a little bit about that in group 2. So I think we'll wrap up this section for now and move out into our breakout groups so that we have enough time to chat and also come back here to reflect. Kim, if you don't mind putting us into our breakout groups, we'll try to come back in 20 minutes. If the moderators need a little bit more time, please shout out and we'll try to add on 5 more minutes. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you back here after the breakout groups. For those of you who are interested more in learning about teaching at the right level, you can learn about teaching at the right level on our website, which is tarl.info or teachingattherightlevels.org. So see you on the other side of the breakout group. So thank you very much. I hope you managed to have a discussion in that very tight time. Hopefully we did get to share a little bit. So maybe I'll ask group 1 to come back and share with us what were some of the key takeaways from the discussion.
Absolutely, yeah, thanks, Devyani. I'm gonna share my screen really quickly to run through some of our discussion points. Let's see here. So we had a nice mix of folks. I think not everyone chimed in on this exact question, but a strong showing from researchers and research organizations, which made sense given the topic of the breakout. And then really interestingly, a mix of interests in terms of where research inputs could be most leveraged in this time to shed light on key questions related to foundational learning. You'll see at the bottom here, these are about descriptive data on learning and needs, diagnostics of education systems, rigorous evaluations of existing programs or components of those programs, research on longer term and non-cognitive outcomes, and then insights on tailoring existing programs to local contexts and constraints. So an interesting mix across those different themes. Almost 100% of the folks in our group said that school closures in COVID-19 had sparked new questions related to foundational learning that hadn't been considered before. And some interesting clustering, more conceptually, you don't see it too much in this word cloud, but lots of questions and priorities around teacher motivation, sustainability, Lots of questions about how do you support learning for all children? How do you leverage technology and e-learning during this time? So some interesting themes coming through there. And then we had a really rich discussion, short but very interesting. And I wanted to just touch on a few of the themes that came out through this discussion. One of the participants said that how do you leverage this triangle of parents, teachers, and students? How do you coordinate these really key actors systematically to promote learning during this time? There was a few points around context and just how much context matters, and how qualitative research methods and mixed methods approaches can really shed light on these questions of context and the way they interact with these types of programs. And then finally, some rich discussion around how do you maintain motivation throughout government systems? When there's a shift at the top and that sort of trickles down throughout the government system, how do you keep that momentum and motivation with a given reform or program innovation? So those are just a few themes, but just in general, I think it was really exciting to see the momentum within the research community, at least represented within this group. And we're really excited, I think, to carry forward that conversation and some of these threads that were discussed. Back to you, Devyani. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Any quick questions or reflections for group one from anyone not in group one? Okay. Well, then anyone from group one would like to add anything to what Rob said? Just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, I would just say, like, it's clear that there's a lot of interest in research on TAL and foundational skills, and there's a lot of need and opportunity. So we should just figure out how to take some of this conversation forward and, actually move the research agenda forward. We should do that offline. Yeah.
Thank you, Amrita. Okay, so we can go to group two now. Karthik, can I hand over to you?
Sure. So sorry, we didn't reach our mentee part because there was more conversation going on, but there were some great questions asked by everyone. One of the topics that were discussed was about motivation, teacher motivation, and how can they take time out of what they're already doing, and how does teaching at the right level integrate. We did emphasize on the role of assessment, of how the key role that assessment really plays, because you have specific goals in mind and a specific duration for teaching at the right level, that you can actually balance out the curriculum and the needs of the school, as well as focus on what is required for the children. We also spoke a bit about what is the system around, like teaching at the right level is just not a training package and then implemented by teachers, but there is an entire system of mentoring, monitoring, and review, which is critical for the implementation, and how to get buy-in from the system itself. And that can be twofold. It could be top-down as well as bottom-up. That you need to find champions within the system, especially if you're partnering with the government, that there need to be people there who really believe in the intervention and continuously review the progress. And hence, it's very important to have a specific duration as well as specific goals for the program. John, would you like to add a bit more? We really got deep into implementation of teaching at the right level. I think certain other challenges were also highlighted.
No, Karthik, I think you did a great job handling that. Thanks.
Yeah, so that was it. Sorry, no mentee results. So.
That's fine, Karthik. So maybe I'll share from the second group two, and then we can see if anybody has any questions. So I think a lot of similar discussions in our group as well around teacher motivation and teacher capacity. I think one of the areas that came out as a important area to strengthen for teachers was the ability to do formative assessment or different types of assessment. As you can see in this word cloud, there's a lot of focus around assessment for action, around student assessment, etc. Another piece that we spoke about was how to ensure that there is adequate mentoring and coaching built in for teachers, and some interesting examples were shared by people in the group. So hopefully we're able to take some of those ideas forward. The next question that we spoke about was what tactics can a system adopt to improve fidelity? And a lot of our discussion focused around mentoring and coaching, and as Karthik mentioned, this is of course a very integral part of the teaching at the right level approach, but also many different kinds of experiences with how to make mentoring and coaching effective, including how to incentivize priorities in the school system. So again, some rich discussion there. Hopefully we are able to take some of those ideas forward. And then we didn't get too much time to discuss the materials, but we just thought about, do we prefer the idea of contextualizing materials, to focus on reading and math when we're going to new country context, or is it important to build from scratch? And we shared examples of how the ASER tool has been contextualized in different country contexts, how materials have been sometimes influenced by what's already there in textbooks, or in some cases built from scratch. And Rukmini spoke a lot about this. I think in general the group was in consensus that we should be contextualizing material, not necessarily building from scratch. And then just a quick view on what was the sentiment around who should be funding the scaling up of these innovations. Obviously, in an ideal world, majority of the group felt it should be education systems themselves. So how do we ensure that we are building strategies that allow education systems to scale up and fund these innovations themselves? And then, of course, a big chunk of people talking about philanthropic funders as well. So that was a quick summary from our group. Cynthia, would you like to add anything?
No, I think you've said it all. Thank you.
Great.
Except
So,
any member of the group wants to add anything.
Sure. Any questions for the two group twos, or any reflections before we move on to the last group? Okay, so maybe Tepi, sorry, Crispus, you had a question, comment?
Yes, I think that was a nice deliberations and discussions that are really going to promote the TAL approach in different countries. So I'm really happy, and I'm actually learning a lot. It's a learning session, and maybe a request that because some of us have just joined late. Is it possible maybe we get a record on the whole session, right from the time it started up to the end of it? Kind of.
Yeah, sure. We'll definitely do that. We'll share the recording with everyone who registered. Thank you so much, Crispus. So maybe I'll hand over to Tepi. And Tepi, if you had a discussion around teacher motivation, maybe you want to highlight that.
Great. Thank you so much, Devyani. And let me just start by saying that we really had a fruitful discussion. Our group was more focused on organizational capacity for implementing teaching at the right level. So we had a mix of people that are thinking about getting started, but also those that are in their early stages of starting teaching at the right level. So with Pranav, was sharing experiences more from India, as well as what's happening in the Botswana context. So a lot of our discussion was around who could be the implementer for delivery of TAL. So we discussed, how does a government model look like, particularly in India as well as in Botswana, where there's a fusion of using teachers as well as using, people from the National Service Program. These are youthful volunteers that are placed in various schools. And then the other discussion was, if these I would say the government delivery model doesn't work, who else could we explore, more to be the instructors and to be mentors. So we shared our experiences in regarding to, either directly hiring, community mobilizers to implement teaching at the right level, or, directly hiring facilitators. So having more of a dual model where there is a little bit more of control on the direct delivery, but also thinking through how does this infuse, within the national government-led delivery. So those were the discussions around our group. Also the importance and the role of having mentors to be able to really support the delivery of teaching at the right level in schools. We talked more also about the resources that one needs, as well as just sharing more, if I want to get started, where do I start, right? And, directing the group to the teaching at the right level website, but also to still be in touch with us, post this call. I think there's a lot that we could share just more on our experiences, which this call allows that, to be possible. But again, thinking more about the resources that instructors and mentors need to get started, such as space, but also, thinking more about designing their assessment, particularly to their various contexts, and thinking more about the design of the curriculum, knowing that each and every context is very different, but also thinking more about, whether you start with English first or math activities first, and also how does that fit in that 1 hour class where you be delivering teaching at the right level. So just thinking more broadly about the how it looks like, and just also sharing that this was, more of a fruitful discussion, because I think it's really great that we are having implementers that are ready to get started and would need, the resources as well as the insights as to, how to actually push and accelerate on that front. So our group really enjoyed that conversation, and I think, Devyani, it would be worth while, post this call, to just really think hard about, how to build on the momentum that's from this call, so that, we could really work with organizations to be able to move in their various contexts. Pranav, do you have anything else to add?
No, Shepi, I think that's very well summarized to the point. So that's okay.
Great. Thanks, Steppy. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's anything that anybody would like to add before we wrap up, please do so. In the meanwhile, if you would like to learn more about teaching at the right level and some of the teaching at the right level inspired approaches across the continent, especially, you can go to teachingattheright.level.org or tarl.info, as you see on the screen. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the organizations listed on the screen, or just learn more about teaching at the right level experiences, please write to us at foundations@teachingattheright.level.org with your request or with ideas, with questions, and we'll make sure we answer them and put you in touch with the right people. So if anyone would like to share anything as we wrap up, happy to hear that now. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope it was useful. Yes, please
Vivian,
go ahead.
I actually have a question which I think has come up in a number of groups and at the start as well, where there was a question around sort of technology and how that might integrate here. So I don't know if people have any thoughts on, the role technology can play in some of this.
Sure. So maybe we can see if anybody would like to answer that. Noam, would you like to respond to that, or did you have a different point?
I'm happy to respond to that. I actually have, so maybe I'll do both actually, if I could, I'll do them in brief.
Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and such an insight-packed session. On the technology one, we've worked with Prasam and others to experiment with, and JPAL colleagues and many others to experiment with how we can support remotely. And we did it through phones, which many people have access to, feature phones, so just phone calls and text messages. So that actually seemed to work really well to help them focus on the foundations, meet them where they are, and try to target instruction to their level. And we actually found it reduced the numeracy by 52%. So really, really striking. So I think there is potential for technology. I think, as we all know, technology is not a panacea. It can often fail. But I think we found that there is real potential, especially if you go to kind of lower technology options, low tech. I think when you kind of just throw laptops at people, it doesn't always work. But when you can really focus on making sure that it's a low cost technology that people have access to and are comfortable engaging in, we found that you really can support on the basics, support remotely, and also try to target instruction a bit. So we're encouraged about the potential for that. So we'll put that out there. We've got some exciting results on that. And then I also just wanted to say, in terms of kind of harnessing this moment and the spirit of this discussion, we actually are seeing some really interesting things as students go back to school. So we're actually finding that where schools are reopening in Botswana, sorry, I've got a fire alarm that just went off here. I think it's a drill, so nothing to worry about. So when schools are reopening, we're actually finding that yeah, we actually do have a paper on that, so happy to share that on the technology. Where schools are reopening, we're actually finding that kids are learning a bit faster than they usually do. And so we're a bit encouraged that actually this is a time to build back better and do things differently, that's not just the phrase, but actually there's real potential there. So just wanted to throw that out there, that this does seem like it's a moment to do things differently. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Norm. Would anybody else like to add anything as we wrap up?
I will just say one thing, if nobody's anything else to add, is like, we are hoping that this is actually supposed to get it's not supposed to just be a discussion, but actually help people move towards action about things they want to do. So if anyone, any of the organizers or anybody else can be of any help, just really don't hesitate to reach out. Like if you're wondering, should I write or not, like one more question or one more outreach is better than one less. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think just to reiterate that, we do want to be able to engage with as many people. We are a group of interested people. Many of you have experiences that we can share. So please feel free to get in touch with us. As I said, irrespective of who you want to reach out to, please feel free to write to us at foundations@teachingattheright.level.org, and we'll make sure we get you in touch with the right people to help move forward. So once again, thank you very much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the session, and I hope it was useful for many of you as well. Thank you for all of you for staying till the end, and look forward to being in touch and to seeing more innovations on the ground. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you too.
Thank you. And remember to send us the report, please.
Sure. We'll send the recording to everyone who registered. Thank you so much.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.